Okay, what can leaders do to engage and motivate their team members? You know, often when you read articles on this, people talk in cliches all the time, you know, have a grand vision or whatever, but they don't talk in practicalities. So there's some very simple things that people can do that make an enormous difference. So just to give you an example, you know, having a team vision and a plan is really, really important. Involving your people in the team planning has a massive effect on the outcomes. But how do most people do their business planning? What usually happens is the leader goes away on an executive retreat, comes up with the plan, brings it back, and then tries to get the team to deliver the plan. And to me, that's a bit like dragging dead horses across the desert because, you know, the team wasn't involved in the plan in the first place. You know, the teams are just great incubators of ideas. So if you get them involved in the plan and they come up with the plan, then it makes all the difference. And it's interesting because I rolled out a whole heap of team business planning sessions to about 1,500 businesses, and nearly every single one saw an increase in revenue and profit. And it was interesting because the CEO of the company said to me at the end, he said, "Mandy, we've realised it almost doesn't matter what plan they come up with. As long as it's their plan and they own it, then they're all making it happen." Another example of something that I think is really important for motivating teams is one-on-ones. To me, this is the number one management strategy that I've seen used or that I've used myself to make a difference. So what do I mean by a one-on-one? A one-on-one is when a leader takes each member of their team out for a chat once a month, and the person comes up with one thing they want to improve the following month, and then the leader and the person meet again the following month, they discuss how that's gone, and then the person sets a new goal for the following month. So very, very simple. But what do most leaders do? They do the once or twice yearly performance appraisal, which to me is a bit like an Olympic coach taking their high-performing athletes out once or twice a year, often telling them everything they're doing wrong, and then expecting to see a real change in performance. It just doesn't happen. Or the other example I use of this is if you have a toddler and, you know, you're trying to teach your toddler to wash their hands after they go to the toilet, you know, if you said to your toddler, wash your hands, and then you came back 6 months later and said, "Oh, how's that going?" You know, you won't get any change. So the whole point of the one-on-one is that, you know, you're doing it regularly and discussing it with people. Now, often people don't want to do one-on-ones because they go, "Oh, we don't have time." But the reality is they save you a lot of time because you're having those regular conversations. You're not putting bushfires out all the time. You know, if you're only speaking to people once or twice a year, all sorts of conflicts and things blow up that you never get a chance to address. It also means you never have to sack anyone, because if you're holding people accountable regularly, then what happens is they leave before you ever have to sack them. The other aspect that's really important motivating people is rewarding and recognising them. You know, people want to be thanked for their work, and you know, it's amazing how that, you know, impacts on their performance. It's interesting because I think most leaders recognise this now, but what I see happening in practice is a lot of them get it wrong. So to give you an example, I went to a conference recently and the CEO was handing out bonuses and awards to all of his people in the business. And he handed out about $3 million worth of prizes. And at the end of the awards ceremony, the mood in the room was just terrible. And I said to the guy sitting next to me, I said, "You know, what's going on here?" And he said to me, "Mandy, very simple." He said he just gave the awards out to all of his pets. So, you know, the girl that got most organised was his Russian PA. And the guy that got the best leader was the guy who he cracks jokes with in the corridor. So, you know, it really made me realise once again that there's no point having a rewards program unless it's objective. You know, you have to find a way to objectively measure people before you can give out awards. And that to me is the key to a rewards and recognition program. So what can leaders do to keep great people? I think I really learnt this from a guy called Frederick Hertzberg. And Frederick Hertzberg did one of the longest, most comprehensive studies on what motivates employees at work. And he found the number one thing was around the actual job itself. So things like being able to do diversity in people's roles, having a little bit of autonomy, having some creative, interesting things in their roles. So things around the actual role. And it's interesting because I saw a great example of this in the US Army. The US Army was losing quite a lot of some of their best leaders, as they went through the ranks. And initially they thought that it might just be because, there's wars on and maybe people don't want to fight. But when they sent the researchers in, they discovered that actually the reason they were turning over was because there was, as you got higher and higher in the levels of leadership, there was a lot more bureaucracy. And these leaders hated bureaucracy. So once you, as a leader, are aware of this, you can do all sorts of things to improve people's roles, even little things. I was working with some dairy farmers and, I remember this dairy farmer giving me feedback saying, after listening to this particular thing about changing roles, he went back and fixed a handle on a bucket and couldn't believe how the people he worked with, because it had been broken for 2 years, thought that was amazing. When in my first store, when I went in there, the staff used to fight a lot because when someone went for lunch and one of their customers came in to collect their airline tickets, no one could find it. So, I just went out as a leader. I could see they fought about this all the time and bought a folder, an A to Z file, where we kept all the tickets and cut out all the arguments. So when you're thinking about people's actual job roles, there's often, hundreds of ways you can improve it that don't cost you money. It just costs you some thinking. And if people who are working for you see that you're actively trying to improve their roles and therefore their lives, they're far less likely to leave.